From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, October 24th, 2024. It's a Thursday. It's also a Jewish holiday today. Just FYI, it's a Simchat Torah. And according to the Jewish calendar, today actually marks the 1 year anniversary of the October 7th attacks. It's a very powerful day. It's a joyous day for Jewish people. Today's the day. Simchat means joy in Hebrew, and Torah obviously is the Bible. And so today we do that. So shortly after the show, I'll be headed to celebrate some of that with my community. But I couldn't not do the show today because there's a lot to talk about. We're going to get right into that. But one thing I want to tell you is, if you missed it, if you're not subscribed to my Substack, I did a full breakdown of President Donald J. Trump's and Vice President Kamala Harris's breakdown on cybersecurity, just and data privacy, kind of their records, what their campaigns are saying, stuff from their excerpts from their speeches, etc. So, non-bias. In fact, I've had a lot of people send me messages saying, like, this is a really cool breakdown. It's got no biases. Yeah, that's the point of doing that, and why it took so long was because I wanted to really remove any sort of opinions on either one of the candidates, whether positive or negative, and give y'all just where they stand, so that we can better fathom whoever gets elected in a few weeks will be leading this nation into what I consider to be the most treacherous time in cybersecurity and in digital security in general, as we see more and more activities from nation-state adversaries really increase, and lines that kind of were set in stone are being crossed. So we're going to talk about that on today's show and over the next few weeks. And you can go read that breakdown for free on my Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. Now join me for a coffee cup cheers, y'all. I've got my double espresso. Let's power through this show. Coffee cup cheers. All right. We're going to start off with two major vulnerability stories here. One coming from Cisco, patching multiple vulnerabilities in their adaptive security appliance, their secure firewall management center, and their firepower threat defense, including one exploited flaw. The CVE is 2024-20481. It's an exploited issue that affects the remote access VPN service of ASA and FTD. ASA is the adaptive security appliance, and FTD is the firepower threat defense. It could allow remote unauthenticated attackers to cause denial of service conditions. The vulnerability is due to resource exhaustion. An attacker could exploit the vulnerability by sending a large number of VPN authentication requests to an affected device, according to the Cisco advisory. The tech giant did say they've observed attacks related to the large-scale brute force campaign targeting multiple VPN and SSH services that it flagged back in April of this year. These attacks target not only Cisco devices, also Checkpoint, Fortinet, SonicWall, MikroTik, DryTech, and Ubiquity products. So Cisco published the advisory as part of its October 2024 semi-annual ASA, FMC, and FTD security advisory bundled publication. It detailed 50 other flaws, including 3 critical issues, but says those are not being exploited in attacks. And again, the simplicity of the fact that this is a 5.8 on the CVSS scale, yet it's being actively used, tells you just how misleading sometimes a CVSS score is. And while we talk about it a lot on the show, as a practitioner, I personally kind of look at this a little differently, because I look at the CVSS score completely different based on my environment. So to me, even if there's let's say a 4.0 score, but it's on what I consider to be my perimeter security, my first line of defense, that's probably getting a higher priority than something that could be behind additional layers of defense and additional layers of mitigation. That's oftentimes lost by practitioners, oftentimes. So it's just something to keep in mind there. A new zero-day vulnerability that's being patched by Fortinet has been exploited by threat actors since at least June of this year. That's according to Google's Cloud's Mandiant. Reports emerged roughly 10 days ago that Fortinet has started notifying customers about a FortiManager vulnerability that could be exploited by remote unauthenticated attackers for arbitrary code execution FortiManager is a product that enables customers to centrally manage their Forti devices, particularly their firewalls. Researcher Kevin Bauman's been tracking reports of the vulnerability since the issue came to light. He's noted that Fortinet customers had initially been provided with mitigation, and later the company started releasing patches. Forti publicly disclosed the vulnerability and announced the CVE, that's CVE 2024-47575 on Wednesday. The company also informed customers about the availability of patches for each impacted FortiManager version, as well as workarounds and recovery methods. Mandiant, who's helped Fortinet investigate the attacks, revealed in their blog post yesterday that to date they've seen over 50 potential victims of these zero-days attacks. They come from various countries and multiple industries. Mandiant says it lacks sufficient data to make an assessment regarding what the threat actor's motivation or location is, but they're tracking this under a new threat cluster called UNC 5820. And so for your threat hunting teams, if you're a Forti customer, for your threat hunting teams, going to Mandiant, pulling all the information they have from UNC 5820 would give them some of the TTPs and IOCs being used to exploit this specific vulnerability and really help them kind of bring it home, and kind of get an idea of, has anything been happening in our environment, and let's see what kind of happens. Has anything happened in our environment since June? And then if it's happened since June, let's take it from there, right? So there's absolutely that. So something to keep in mind. You want to make sure you get this patched ASAP. And again, the indicators of compromise for this attack have been made available by both Fortinet and Mandiant. We'll continue with Iran targeting the U.S. presidential elections. The group Cotton Sandstorm is now actively targeting election-related websites and media outlets in the U.S. The report coming from Microsoft says the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the group's been performing reconnaissance, probing key election systems in multiple states, raising concerns of potential foreign interference. The report released on Wednesday highlights Cotton Sandstorm's activities in several battleground states where the group has been assessing vulnerabilities in specific election infrastructure. Additionally, in May, the group scanned an unidentified U.S. media outlet, possibly aiming to uncover weaknesses that could be exploited for more direct influence operations. Cotton Sandstorms has been engaged in such activities since the 2020 U.S. presidential election. They've been involved in cyber influence operations designed to spread misinformation and create chaos. They've disguised as being members of the Proud Boys, and sent threatening emails to Florida voters, pressuring them to support former President Donald Trump. Although the campaign didn't directly compromise voting systems, it was aimed to sow doubt and confusion around the election process. They've also launched, in the aftermath of the 2020 election, they've also launched another operation, this time encouraging violence against election officials who dismiss claims of widespread voter fraud. Microsoft's finding for this election cycle, though, go a bit more as they see them ramping up their efforts. Microsoft said the activity is part of a broader campaign by foreign actors, including Russia and China, to influence the politics by spreading divisive content. Government agencies, including ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, have confirmed ongoing efforts by adversaries to interfere in the process, particularly Russia, Iran, and China. They remain intent on fanning divisive narratives to divide Americans, undermine confidence in our democratic system. There's more evidence of growing operations. So Russia has kind of shifted their focus towards Democratic candidate Kamala Harris using AI-generated content to spread false information. They had a video of a deepfake of Harris making derogatory comments about Trump circulated online. Another one was accused of illegal activities abroad. Meanwhile, Chinese have focused their influence on double-down ballot candidates, members of Congress, and those with anti-China policy. Those include on several high-profile Republicans like Senator Marsha Blackburn and Representative Barry Moore. So there are concerns around this foreign operations here, and that's something to be mindful of. And we're kind of in it there. So despite the denials, government agencies are working on addressing these concerns. And again, we'll see what happens there. But in some cases, we are making it easier for our adversaries to take advantage of the systems. The state of Wisconsin is now being sued over their voting systems' allegedly weak cyber protections. An election clerk and voter have filed a lawsuit against the Wisconsin Elections Commission, seeking to block the state from continuing to use its online election portal until it approves the alleged weak security protections. The portal, which is known MyVote, is a statewide system used for voter registration and absentee ballot requests. However, the lawsuit claims that by providing nothing but a name and a birth date, you can then request a ballot to be sent to any address without any sort of verification from the state as to whether or not the person is valid, and the request is valid based on current records. The complaints are also asking the Wisconsin federal court to order the Wisconsin Election Committee to perform a security audit to find voting fraud that the system may already have enabled before continuing to rely on the platform. So this election in Wisconsin, this lawsuit is actually now in federal court, and we'll see if anything comes out of that. Russia, for their end, have been probing U.S. critical infrastructure, and according to top CISA officials, were very close to actually causing some damage there. According to a event at the MITRE AttackCon in McLean, Virginia, CISA Threat Branch Chief Mark Singer relayed some of the details surrounding a late 2021, early 2022 breach of MSPs who've provided some pretty critical services to critical infrastructure entities inside the U.S. It was one of 3 incident response engagement that CISA was involved in during the months leading up to the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. CISA's engagement in the MSP case appears to have begun in January of 2022, about a month before the Russian invasion, several months after Russian threat actors had breached the MSP's network in August of 2021. It was getting more and more concerning as time goes on that the threat actors that we were addressing essentially targeted the managed service provider network, where they were in a position to collect, tamper, alter communications. The reason that this was alarming was that the customer set of that service provider was like the who's who of critical infrastructure entities in the US. They're essentially targeting the big boys there. The threat actors had reached a place where the communication that they could spoof, alter, tamper, or replay was all of the ICS data, modus protocol going to the actual operational technology of these companies. So they were able to break that. They're able to break that IT/OT kind of divide. By the way, on the SANS report that we talked about yesterday on the show, that was literally one of the things that was the number one reason of ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure, was their ability to be able to infiltrate through IT, and then through the IT systems manipulate the ICS data. And that's significant because someone who's in energy now, I can tell you that if you're able to manipulate ICS data, you can essentially do a whole lot of damage in terms of safety, reliability, and availability. All of that is significant in the power industry because that's where the regulation lies. So the CISA helped with an aggressive containment response. They've successfully evicted the threat actors from the network, and a couple of months later, Russia pivoted their focus back to the Ukraine, leaving the U.S. cyber systems, but the U.S. kind of critical infrastructure hasn't been left. China's picked up where Russia has left off, with Vault Typhoon and Salt Typhoon both targeting U.S. critical infrastructure. And so that's something to keep in mind there as well. We'll continue with some of our final stories for the show today. The North Korean group Lazarus, who's known for their cyber activities, exploited a Google Zeroday tracked as CVE 2024-4947 through a fake decentralized finance game targeting individuals in the cryptocurrency space. Google fixed the issue for CVE 2024-4947 on May 25th. That's Google version 125.0.6422.60/.61. Kaspersky discovered the campaign started in February of 2024. It's a new variant of the manuscript backdoor malware on the personal computer of one of its customers in Russia. Lazarus has been using that script for a while, and they were trying to gain financial access to crypto, which is the North Korean modus operandi. Luma Stealer stars in a new campaign that's using a malicious Captcha page to scam targets and clicking through the verification process, triggering a malware download. The malware as a service Luma Stealer is used by threat actors to steal sensitive information like passwords and crypto wallet data, according to Qualys. When the user clicks an "I'm not a robot" button, verification steps are presented. And according to Vishwajit Kumar from Qualys, he says that they're completing these steps triggers the execution of a PowerShell command that initiates the download of an initial stager on the target machine. This latest Captcha-based tactic is new, adding that the Luma Stealer campaign analysis. Previous campaign relied on kind of info stealers ranging from basic phishing to exotic gambits. This one seems to more build on the ability of tricking users into believing that Captcha is Captcha. So there's that. Embargo Ransomware Group is developing and testing tools that disable security defenses, including a method that exploits a vulnerability in drivers to bypass protection systems. According to ESET, they've discovered the malware linked to the deployment of the Embargo ransomware, which uses a custom loader and an endpoint detection killer. Embargo first serviced in April of this year amid the shakeup after the kind of crackdowns or the early exit of Black Hat, although Black Hat is back. If you missed that episode, we did that earlier this week. You can catch that on our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast listening platform. We go into detail there. The group claims 10 victims on their dark website, including an Australian non-bank lender, a South Carolina police department, and an Idaho community hospital. ESET compromise found 2 primary components for this malware: the M-deployer, a loader designed to deploy the ransomware and other payloads, and the MS4 killer, an EDR killer that disables endpoint detection and response systems by exploiting vulnerable drivers. The key thing about this one, though, it's written in Rust. It's all Rust. So keep that in mind. Not Go, not anything else. In our final story of the day, Penn State was fined $1.25 million for failing to meet cybersecurity requirements in their federal contracts. These contracts with the Department of Defense and NASA relates to 15 different contracts where the school had agreed part of the contract to have specific cybersecurity controls between 2018 and 2023, and subsequently failed to develop and implement any plans to correct the issues. Penn State is the first school to reach a settlement. Georgia Tech and other universities are also in the crosshairs of the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense for their lack of adhering to cybersecurity standards that were part of their contracts between the universities and the government. So we'll see how those other ones play out. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.